In today's demo, we'll be taking a look at OneSpan's integration with Salesforce and our ability to generate a OneSpan signed transaction right from within Salesforce without ever having to leave Salesforce. Also, we'll see how the user can take advantage of all the rich data in Salesforce in the transaction. First, we'll see how the user can prepare a standalone ad hoc transaction. We'll discuss how to automate the positioning of fields and interact with Salesforce data through what we call conventions. We'll also review adding documents from Salesforce and also adding the recipients for signatures. Then we'll see how the OneSpan designer brings in the Salesforce data as well as positioning the fields and data input fields. Then we'll send the transaction to the signer and see that flow. Finally, we'll take a look at a more automated way of doing the same transaction with a Salesforce action, which can greatly reduce time and effort for your teams. One thing to note, this demo is focused on the functional flow of the connector and not the installation and configuration of the connector. For help with installation and configuration, please reach out to the OneSpan technical support team. Let's start by jumping over to the Transactions tab in Salesforce. Because the OneSpan signed connector is a managed package for Salesforce, when it gets installed, it adds several objects and tabs to Salesforce that brings in OneSpan signed functionality into Salesforce, including the Transactions tab, Conventions tab, Templates tab, and several others. Here we can see a list of all recent transactions. Let's click New to create a new transaction. We're going to create a new ad hoc transaction, but we could also create one from a pre-existing template. Here we can see a list of some existing templates that could be used. For now, we'll go back to ad hoc. Also, we're creating a standalone transaction, but transactions can be attached to any Salesforce object, standard or custom objects. This allows the transactions of a record to be accessible in the related list of that record. We'll see how this transaction shows up in the related list of a Salesforce contact record later in the demo. We give our transaction a name, and then we click Next. We click on Advanced Options, and here we can add our convention to the transaction. A convention is what contains the instructions for what Salesforce data we're going to be pulling in and writing to. The convention also has information about where the signature field areas are going to be on the document. Also, the convention does not have a document associated to it like a template would, so in that sense, a convention is more like a layout. Now let's load the document we want to get signed. We can use documents that are loaded in Salesforce, or I can upload documents right from my computer. In this case, I'm going to do a search for a document that's in Salesforce. I find my document and I add it to the selected files. Once I add it here, now I can add the selected documents to my transaction. One of the great things about the standalone embedded OneSpan signed connector compared to OneSpan signed web interface is that it allows you to access documents directly from Salesforce, such as files and documents in Salesforce, files attached to Salesforce records, such as accounts, contacts, and opportunities. So for example, if a salesperson has created a sales quote in an opportunity, they can select and send it for signatures. Now we add our recipients to the transaction. We can select an existing contact from Salesforce. I can type in the information of a contact that's outside of Salesforce, or I can use a user or lead record from within Salesforce. Let's go ahead and use a contact that's in Salesforce. We type in Sam Signer's name and search for him. We make sure to add a label to our recipient. So wherever there's a field for Signer 1, we know that is where Sam Signer needs to sign or input information. We click Prepare to move on to configuring the document and fields. And here we are in the OneSpan Sign Designer. We can see that all the fields have been added to the document and they are also associated to Sam Signer, all the green fields, because of the recipient label we used and the way the convention was set up. If we didn't use a convention, then we would have to add all the fields manually. You can see here down below we have the ability to work with our recipients, adding the fields for all the recipients, and being able to manage our documents. When we're satisfied with all the fields in the document, we can X out of this window to move on to the sending. Now we can click send. Here we can see that we have a brand new transaction in Salesforce with a status of sent. And we can see that our Sam signer has not yet signed this. So now let's go into Sam's email to see the invite. Here's the new email invite. And he can click here to get into the documents for signing. Sam can see and accept the consent disclosure. And here we can see that the data fields have been filled in with Salesforce data per the convention that we applied earlier. We can also see that city has been added as an input field, which lets us overwrite what's in the field, and this will get saved back to Salesforce. Let's change the city. So we've changed it from City of Industry to City of Commerce. Now we can sign and confirm. Now if we go back to Salesforce, we can see the address of the contact has been updated. Here we can see that the city is now City of Commerce. And if we look at the related list for the contact, we can see all the transactions he's been linked to. So we clicked on the new transaction to review the details of this transaction. And here we can see that the status is now completed. All recipients have signed. We can also download the original document, the signed document, and the evidence summary. And we can see the entire history of this transaction from the moment it was created to when the fields were inserted into Salesforce, when the status changed from prepare to sent, the signings, and finally when the transaction was completed. Now we're going to take a look at a more automated way of doing the same thing. This automation is very useful in situations where people, say a salesperson, is performing the same flow over and over again, using the same document and using the same Salesforce data. Let's go to the account record for Acme Cloud. We're going to click on the sales agreement action. This will kick off the entire workflow we saw previously, but all in one step. As you can see, this automatically created a transaction, it assigned a convention, it added the document, and it added the signer, and it sent the transaction to the signer. And if we go into Sam's email, we can see that he once again has a new email inviting him to sign this new document. And from this point, the rest of the signer experience is exactly like we saw earlier. So hopefully you agree that OneSpan's connector allows Salesforce users a user-friendly experience that saves time and effort while greatly reducing the opportunity for error. Thank you.